Network Entertainment.
There's the people pleaser. This is usually someone who has grown up believing that they have to please other people. They have to earn love. They might have had strict parents,
Right.
or their parents were too busy. They're constantly trying to get love from their partner. They're always, focusing on the partner, doing things for the partner, changing themselves for the partner, but then they lose their identity.
Right.
And they basically get taken advantage of in the relationship. They don't have much respect. They don't get respected by their partner. Usually you end up getting left by your partner because they don't really value you. There's the caretaker block. So this is where you've grown up to believe that you have to take care of everybody, everyone else's responsibilities on your shoulder. So you feel there's no time for your love life. There's no time to focus on yourself.
Hi, this is Mirza Season. Welcome to You Can Do This, a podcast that'll help you achieve your dreams and goals one episode at a time. What are you waiting for? Let's go! You're smart, accomplished, attractive, and self-aware, but when it comes to love, money, or time, why do you still feel stuck? And no matter how hard you try, these three things often feel out of reach or out of balance. If you've ever felt like something invisible is holding you back from the life you want and deserve, this episode will help you start unblocking those hidden blocks. Today's guest is a healer, coach, and creator of the Magnetize System, a 3-step method for turning dreams into reality by clearing deep emotional patterns. She's helped thousands of women stop chasing love and money and time and start attracting them by activating the power of self-love. She also hosts Project Loving Myself, a Spotify Philippines Top 50 podcast, where she guides women to put themselves first and live a love-centered life. Please welcome back on the show, Sanaiyah Gurnamal.
Thank you, Mirza. It's
Hi.
always wonderful to be here with you.
So nice to see you. So welcome back. The last time you were on the show, you talked about manifesting the one, brought about by how you helped Ellen Adarna manifest her now husband, Derek Ramsey, and get married in just 8 months. How has life and your coaching and healing practice been like for you since then?
I mean, obviously, that was just a pretty spectacular manifestation that happened on the podcast. And, it was really interesting for me, Mirza, because I've been doing this for years. I've been doing it for a decade before the Ellen episode. And, people come to me all the time. Like, I meet clients that I haven't seen in years, and they're like, Sanaiyah, do you remember we did that work together? Well, a year later, I got married, or a couple months later, I met my partner. So it's something I've gotten so used to. I thought it was just really normal.
Right.
That this is something I do with my
oh,
clients.
well.
Yeah, oh well, because it was something that was happening so frequently. But when it happened on the podcast episode, and I didn't intend to do a soulmate manifestation.
all right.
It just, in the moment, I felt the strong guidance that she's ready, do it for her.
Wow.
And so I just, I went on my intuition and I asked her, would you be willing? Are you ready for this? And she said, yeah, I'm game. And this was on the episode. So the whole thing.
on the spot.
On the spot. It wasn't planned. It wasn't, orchestrated in any way. I just said, let's do it. And she was game. And I told her on the podcast, within 3 months, you'll meet someone. Because that's generally,
You did?
I did. I specifically said within 3 months, because that is almost the average length of time that I see with other clients. That's how confident I am. And I didn't even think, oh my God, I'm saying 3 months in front of all these listeners who might hold me to it. But because it was something that was very normal in my life, it's something I saw all the time, I didn't hesitate. I just said, yeah, you'll meet someone in 3 months. And she met someone in like 2.5 months to the day of the episode.
Oh my gosh.
So it was really spot on. And I almost forgot about that. I had actually listeners message me being Sanaiyah. It was within the 3 months. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, of course. So of course that changed my visibility when it came to soulmates and relationships. Previously, people would come to me for lots of different issues, and then the soulmate manifestation would happen at the end of our work together, and then they would, live their happily ever after. But it wasn't like people would come to me specifically to find a soulmate.
Right.
But after the Ellen episode, people started to come to me specifically like, Sanaiyah, this is what I want. And honestly, that opened my eyes to a whole world of possibility because I struggled with that, Mirza. You know my story. We've talked about it. Love was a really difficult part of my own life. I had a lot of relationships that didn't work out. And when I realized that there's so many women out there who feel the same way, who are going through the same things I did, and I can actually help them. So I actually started to work more closely with women who were looking for love. And that's how I started to discover these blocks that we're going to be talking about today. And from the love blocks, I went on to discover that it isn't just our love life that we're blocking, but it shows up in our relationship with time. It shows up in our relationship with money, right? And so love, time, and money are really three areas of our life that people end up really limiting themselves and holding themselves back. And
That's so interesting. I never thought there would be a connection. And now I'm so excited to unblock and unpack. So tell us briefly how you came to help women break free from emotional blocks and patterns.
So my journey starts about 15 years ago, where I started to read and take courses and workshops for myself. I wanted to heal myself because I was struggling with a few different things in my life. I didn't know that the path I was going on was going to lead me to all the healing, but it did. And as I noticed that the more work I did internally, so it had nothing to do with the people outside of me, with the situations outside of me. It was just internal work that I was doing with a coach or a healer. And I noticed that my life on the outside would very quickly change based on this internal work I was doing. And then I was doing a lot of reading that validated, like, the more you do work on your own mindset, your belief systems, your emotions, the more your world outside of you changes. And that was the first time I realized the power we have, right? We have the power to change our lives. And that was a huge moment for me, that I'm not a helpless victim of the situations in my life. I can do something about it. And honestly, it was completely for me on my own journey. And then people started to come to me and ask me about what I was doing because I looked different. I was more confident. I was attracting people everywhere I was going. I became more magnetic as an individual. I would go to parties and people would just single me out and want to talk to me. And I would passionately talk about all these different things I was learning and all the healing I was doing. And before I knew it, people would be like, can you do something for me? Can you, so all these clients were first just curious people who wanted a bit of what I was doing. And soon, people were actually asking to do sessions with me. And so even though I had a full-time job in fashion, over the weekends, I would do sessions. And it started off just because I wanted to get better at it. But before I knew it, I started to feel like this is what really brings me happiness. Like I started to enjoy my weekends and the work I was doing more than the rest of my life.
Right.
And I started to, go on trips and go on more different journeys where I would get certified in different types of techniques. And before I knew it, I quit my, fashion job in this amazing company. They actually were promoting me to shoe buyer. And Mirza, right? Buyer for designer shoes, traveling between Italy, Dubai, and Paris. That's like every girl's dream job. And I turned it down to be like, you know what? I think I want to change my entire career path and I just want to work with people because there's something special in what I'm doing and it makes a difference. It makes a difference to other people. It has changed my life and suddenly that's all I really wanted to do.
And at which point did the unblocking of the love, money, and time aspects happen?
So it started with me I took courses. I took a lot of courses. And in every course that I took, I was healing myself and working on myself. And so I could see when I was, I started a business. I had a well-being center. And I recognized that I had all these blocks about money. When I had my third child during the pandemic, I was juggling 3 children, a business, and, my children. So it was like, I was always running out of time and stressed, and I couldn't get everything done, and I never felt accomplished. So every single thing that I've worked on has been from my own experience. My love blocks is what brought me to actually go through this path of learning how to love myself.
Right.
And it was only when I loved myself that I attracted my soulmate, like Ellen. You know, I met my partner a month after I manifested, and that was kind of crazy too. I knew him for 4 days. I met him at a wedding in Cebu. I knew him for 4 days, and I knew I'm going to marry this guy. And he proposed a month later. So every single block that I now work with so many people on are my own personal blocks. They're my own mountains that I climbed, which taught me how to help other people with these very same blocks.
What happens if we don't unblock these blocks?
Well, you repeat the same patterns,
Right.
right? So if you're struggling with love, you keep attracting relationships where you are unhappy, you get your heart broken, you feel not good enough, whatever is your pattern in love, you'll just keep repeating it. And maybe you'll find somebody, but you'll get married, and then the same thing will happen even in the
It's not a
relationship.
guarantee.
It's almost like you'll just repeat the same pattern when you were single, and you'll repeat it with the partner. So if you felt never good enough and that's why your relationships don't work out, you might eventually find somebody, but you'll still feel not good enough with that partner, and then repeat the same story.
So if women keep saying things like, I'm so unlucky in love, I keep attracting bad boys, what do you have to say to them?
Oh, they have a commitment issue.
Oh.
So if you attract the wrong type of guy, you've got a commitment
How
issue.
so?
Well, that was actually the first block I ever recognized in my own life, because I always dated bad boys. I always dated guys who were like, I thought were really like hot and exciting, and they were hot and cold with me. You know, one minute they were giving me all this attention, and the next minute they were ghosting me, and you know, that whole cat and mouse game. And I played that, and I always said, oh, they really love me. They just, you know, they don't know how to express it. And I would make these stories and these excuses for why the relationship couldn't move forward. And I was always thinking that, you know, they had something holding them back. Right. And it was them. Right. And then one day it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, wait a minute. I'm the common denominator in every single one of these relationships where the guy can't commit to me. What's wrong with this story? It's not them. It's me. I'm the commitment phobe, not them. And that was really just the light bulb moment when I realized if I'm attracting the same kind of partner, right, I'm clearly on some level choosing the same type of partner.
So that you don't have to commit.
So that I don't have to commit. Because it's so much easier for somebody else to leave you. And rather than you admit to yourself that I'm afraid to be in love, I'm afraid to be in a relationship, I'm afraid to be vulnerable with someone. It's easier to hide behind other people's flaws than to see your own right in the face. It's very hard for us to accept.
So it's easier to blame them.
It's easier to blame. And they're the excuse. If they leave me, you know, it's not my fault. Yeah, it's not my fault. It's them, right? But deep down, you're just protecting yourself.
So when you unblocked this and you recognized the pattern, did you, after that, learn how to seek not bad boys?
So here's what happened. It's kind of really funny. I love that you asked me that because I think I realized this somewhere around June 2nd or 3rd. I was in a healing course. I was doing some inner child work, and it hit me that, oh my God, it's me. It's not them. And then 10 days later, I was flying to Cebu. I lived in Dubai at that time. I was flying to Cebu because my cousin from Hong Kong was marrying a half Filipino, half Indian from Manila. And their wedding was in Cebu. So I went to this wedding and I met a guy there. And he was your typical, like, looked like a bad boy. I already heard that this guy at every wedding, you know, he finds some hot girl.
Reputation.
Right? And it's like literally the type of partner that I now am aware I tend to like.
Right.
But so what I did, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this again. I'm not into this anymore. And I kind of also felt like I'm here at a wedding. I'm not here to find love. I already kind of was like, I'm focused on my work. And this guy kept making, you know, an effort, and he kind of chased me through the wedding. And, you know, I like to dance, so we would dance all night. But I didn't think it would go beyond that. I just enjoyed spending time with him. And when I went home to Dubai, he and I started talking on the phone, and we would talk all night. And
But you're fully aware.
I'm fully aware that I don't want to be in a relationship. I don't want to create the same pattern.
So why even talk to him?
He made all the effort.
Okay.
And I said, I'm going to show myself that this time I'm not going to, just like run after this kind of situation. So I literally did everything I could to tell him who I am. I said, look, I'm a little weird. I'm not like the other girls. I believe in healing and spirituality. I believe in work. Like I said everything I could that I would have never told a guy who I really wanted to be with. I told him the truth about me. I pushed him away as much as I could. But the more honest I was with him, the more real I was with him, the more he was actually interested, the more we found that we had this really strong connection. Turns out, Mirza, he is the most loyal person ever.
So the reputation was wrong.
So it was like a guy having fun because he hadn't found the right girl, but he was the real deal. He was the guy I thought every other guy was, that one day he'll change or he'll settle down with the right girl. Well, that was my husband. So I actually attracted, when I shifted in me, I attracted someone who could love me completely, and
what
it really
story.
was, it really was 100% him all in, and me responding to that and us having a connection. But it was a real relationship. It wasn't the type of relationship where I'm trying to, make stories about why this person can't love me the way I need, or why he's, hot and cold. This was like all in.
Do you feel lost, doubting yourself, and tired? You question your worth and existence? Well, I'm here for you. Hey, this is Gailey Chavez, and I'm the host of Free Yourself Podcast. My podcast talks about self-love, self-discovery, and growth. This is for everyone who wants to live their fullest life and become the person that they could be. Let me help out and remind you that this is your life, your path, that you are not broken, and you are worth it. Catch me every Friday at 8 p.m. See ya!
Would you say that he changed for you?
I don't think he changed for me. I think that I truly believe that when I realized what was going on in my life, that I took responsibility and ownership, that other people weren't the problem, I was the problem. When I realized that, it was like in that moment, I was kind of free from the false truth about the situation. It's like I realized, I've been doing this because deep down I'm afraid. And I'm going to choose not to be afraid anymore. And, Mirza, I'd been doing years of healing at that point. So I've been doing work on my relationships. It wasn't like it was just that one thing. I had done so much work that the realization came as a result of the work I had done on myself internally, a lot of inner healing. So that was kind of like the icing on the cake. It was like, okay, that now I get it. And I think I changed so much. I changed so much that I actually attracted somebody who could love me the way I wanted, and I wasn't afraid to love him back.
Amazing.
Yeah. And we've been together for 15 years, and it is really the relationship that I've always wanted.
The best testimonial is your own.
Always.
So what are the other love blocks that women commonly have?
So there's the commitment phobe, which we just talked about. There's the people pleaser. This is usually someone who has grown up believing that they have to please other people. They have to earn love. They might have had strict parents, or their parents were too busy, or they were raised by somebody else. Basically, they figured out that they have to please other people, or they have to earn their approval for them to be loved, for them to be noticed, for them to survive in some way. So they grow up to a people-pleasing adult where they're constantly trying to get love from their partner. They're always, focusing on the partner, doing things for the partner, changing themselves for the partner, but then they lose their identity.
Right.
And they basically get taken advantage of in the relationship. They don't have much respect. They don't get respected by their partner. So that's the people-pleaser block. And usually you end up getting left by your partner because they don't really value you.
Right.
The third block would be there's the the caretaker block. So this is where you've grown up to believe that you have to take care of everybody. And usually you grow up and you're still taking care of everybody else. So everyone else's kind of life or everyone else's responsibilities on your shoulder. So you feel there's no time for your love life. There's no time to focus on yourself. And a lot of people who have like aging parents.
Yes.
Right? Or they feel they have to, I've had clients who they have to pay a family debt. So they're earning money to pay the family debt. So basically they've taken on.
It's not even their own debt.
It's not even their own, but they're carrying some kind of sense of responsibility where they feel, I can't focus on my love life now.
Right.
Right? I know a guy who went through a financial issue and in his mind, I have to fix the financial issue before I can even, consider a relationship for myself. That's the caretaker.
Right.
And that's
sounds very Filipino.
It is actually
Like
something.
we have a lot of breadwinners.
Yeah. It's very Asian, Mirza.
Oh, Asian.
It's very
Right,
Asian, right? That sense of responsibility. But I've had it with non-Asian clients as well. Just looks a little bit different.
Right.
So you've got the commitment phobe, you've got the people pleaser, you've got the caretaker, you've got the runaway bride.
Oh, what's that?
So this is where you are completely like into the relationship, and then the relationship goes to the next step and you get cold feet.
Okay.
So your partner wants to introduce you to the parents and you start freaking out. You create a fight. You push them away. You find a reason to get out of it, but you don't know you're doing it. It's because when you get too close, you get scared that you're going to get hurt again. So you find reasons or excuses to run. That's why I call it the runaway bride, and there was a Julia Roberts, Richard Gere movie where she runs from the altar. But essentially you've been hurt so much and traumatized, you can't trust anyone. And so you fear intimacy, you fear vulnerability, you fear getting too close to anyone. Okay. And then the very last block is the memory chaser.
Oh.
The memory chaser is like, that ex, the one that got away.
The one that got away. There's even an acronym, TOTGA.
Totka,
the one that got away.
So basically you romanticize it. You put them on a pedestal. Even though they treated you so badly and there was a good reason why you broke up in the first place, in your mind, oh my God, that was the perfect relationship. I will never do better than that.
Why does that happen?
So that happens because there's also kind of fear of being alone. So you cling on to what's familiar. You might also be someone who's used to abusive relationships. Maybe you saw it growing up or you went through it yourself, that it's kind of the normal thing. So you're afraid to kind of be alone. And I just talked to someone who said, honestly, Sanaiyah, in the last 12 years, I've never been single. If I break up with one person, I go on to somebody else. I don't know how to be single.
Right.
That's a memory chaser.
Right.
They're just so afraid of being alone, they have to cling on to the past. Or they have to run on to the next one to forget the past relationship. But often they stay stuck and they can't move forward because they keep thinking that, they lost the one true love and the ship has sailed. They'll never find another partner again. So that kind of reruns of the past, getting stuck there, not moving forward, comparing every future partner with the past. That's a very common memory chaser type of behavior.
Is there a common key to unblocking all these blocks?
I'm glad you asked that. There isn't one common, but there's a specific way for each one. So that's what I've done. So the reason I came up with these blocks, I identified these blocks, is I would see these things repeating over and over again. And then I noticed that when I had this kind of client, this is the kind of work I did. When I had this kind of client, it would always go back to these particular type of situations. That's why I can describe it so clearly because I've seen it over and over again. And I found it really is kind of one of these 5 categories. And a lot of people have more than one of these blocks working together, but there's one more dominant than the other. Okay.
Right.
And I found that a lot of these blocks are connected to childhood trauma, self-worth issues, fears, either of past trauma or future, trauma, I'll be cheated on or I was cheated on. It can be traced back to our relationship with our mother or our father. So mother and father wound. And if you didn't have a mother or father, it is the replacement. Maybe it was the grandmother or it was the grandfather.
Right.
And sometimes there are abuse issues. So depending on the kind of block, I have found certain common themes and issues, which then directs me to do this kind of work with them versus that kind of work. And I actually created a whole program called Soulmate Magnet,
Yes.
where I take people through the journey of, what is your specific block? Where did it come from? And let's go ahead and clear out everything. Because once you clear the block, you stop attracting the kind of person that block personality attracts. So, for example, a people pleaser will tend to attract a narcissist. Someone who is more dominant in the relationship, right? A commitment phobe will always attract emotionally unavailable partners. Right? The caretaker will often be single. And shut down any potential mates. Or they have a mate who's just waiting for them and eventually gets frustrated because they're not the priority.
Right.
So depending on your block, you tend to attract certain kinds of people. So I basically help my clients clear all these blocks, understand themselves better, do all the healing, and then build their self-worth, build their self-love, build their self-esteem, and then finally get very clear on exactly what kind of relationship you want. And I call that your relationship vision. And so really this is what I want. This is where I want to live. This is how we handle money, like getting really specific. And then I work with my clients to do a manifestation the way I did with Ellen. And they literally get what they want. Whatever's on that list that we work on, they get it. Because at the end of the day, you can have what you want. You absolutely can have what you want. You just have to clear your own blocks. You have to clear what's on the way, whatever is blocking you, whatever is getting in the way, you have to clear that. So that's the inner work you have to do.
So what was Ellen Adarna's block?
Ellen Adarna had a mixture of a couple of different things. I don't want to speak too much about hers because I do want to respect kind of her confidentiality. But I will say that she talks very openly on that episode about how she had a lot of mental health struggles and she hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And she talked about, pills and different things. So this is something I see that people sometimes hit rock bottom and go through the absolute worst before they can start climbing up. And my goal is to help you before you hit the rock bottom. Before it gets so bad, right? Because it's so much harder. Yeah. And I know with Ellen, she struggled a lot to get out of what she went through. And she ended up doing a lot of also work on herself. She did some work where she had to face her fear. It was very extreme, like pushing herself.
Yeah, she showed it on her social media.
Exactly, right? So she did a lot of extreme work that helped her kind of break through her fears. But also for her, the journey of really hitting rock bottom and having to take care of her child on her own and knowing there was no one there, that is the journey that made the woman.
Wow.
You know what I mean? She had to kind of really pick herself up and survive, that survival journey, which I'm sure, if anyone was in her place, they know how difficult that can be. And she did that. And when I met her, I could see that this was a woman who had been through a lot. And she finally learned to be okay being alone.
Yeah.
She didn't need a man. When I met her, she didn't need a man anymore. She had finally realized her own strength. And so that is kind of the journey where we have to go from our weakest moments to our strongest moments and realize that, anyone would be lucky to have me. And I'm not going to settle for anything less than that.
Right.
And what I love about their experience, and I'm sure, Mirza, you've followed them as well.
Yeah.
They have a very unique relationship. It is a very beautiful relationship between the two of them. They're actually very alike, and I would have never imagined. Like they play all these gags on each other, and they're very playful, and they both take to social media. And, their relationship, it's like, wow, these are two people who actually really fit together.
They're meant to be
They
soulmates.
are meant to be. And that is what I have found, that the more you love yourself and embrace who you are and you accept everything about you, the dark, the ugly, the trauma, all of it, finally you love yourself. You will attract a partner who can love you for all that you are. And that is my story. And that is the story that I have worked with thousands of women
Right. I read somewhere that ironically, it's when you've worked on yourself so much that you don't need a man. That's the best time to meet a man.
Yes. It's when you stop looking because you don't need it. You go from the energy of need because need comes from lack.
Yes.
Like I am incomplete. I am not enough without that. And every time we come from lack, we just create more lack.
Right.
Right? But when we come from a place, well, I don't need anything. I don't need money. I don't need a partner. I don't need status. Okay. I am who I am. I love who I am. And at that point, you are the strongest, most empowered version of you. And people get attracted to that energy. People want to be around it. You know, people see all of you because you're not hiding anymore.
Wow. And so now let's go to money. So would you say that it's when you don't need money that the money will attract you?
Oh my God, same thing, right? Same
How?
thing. You know, how many people who need money get the money they need?
Thank you for listening to You Can Do This. If you want to know more about me, visit Myrza.com. That's MYRZA.com. And follow me at Mirza Season on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn. If you like this episode, please don't forget to rate it 5 stars. Hit the follow button on your podcast streaming platforms and hit the notification bell to get alerted every time we release a new episode. Catch you at our next convo, and always remember, you can do this.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.